I'm delighted to say we've been joined by Sir Daniel Day-Lewis and Ronan Day-Lewis. So we have the star, we have the co-writers, and we have the director all on one sofa. Gentlemen, you're very welcome. How are you?
Well, fine. We're a little bit groggy, but we're good. Thank you.
Is that because of all the razzmatazz?
A little bit.
Yeah, it's been a crazy few days, but yeah, happy to be on here. Thanks for having us.
And to both of you, but Daniel first, are you enjoying the razzmatazz? Because this is all a bit of the side of the craft that you're not 100% engaged with sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it has been lovely. We were in Athens previously in the festival. There was a charity benefit screening of the film, some very old friends of mine, and that was lovely. And no, it's all been really, really nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, just definitely, it's more talking than I'm normally used to.
Yeah. So Ronan, what's it like first time directing a movie? What do you make of all this hullabaloo?
Yeah, it's been really interesting because I feel like coming from more of a painting background, you don't have to do much talking or about the work. It's kind of just all internal, like in your head. And so it's in a way actually been good to have to think more deeply about how to articulate what we just made together. Yeah, we've met some really amazing people over the last few weeks, and it's been great.
In an odd kind of a way, you're sort of inventing it as you go along, because
Right.
very often you're talking about things that you wouldn't have thought to articulate with sort of one eye over your shoulder in a way, because already it feels like we're sort of a bit separated from it.
Yeah.
Ronan, you're the director. Introduce us to the story. Just tell us what we need to know as we contemplate going to the movies to watch this film on as big a screen as possible.
So it's Anemone is about a man who's living in a sort of state of self-banishment in extremely isolated setting in the middle of nowhere. And at the outset of the story, his long estranged brother, who he hasn't seen in 20 years, shows up mysteriously at his doorstep. And over the course of the next few days, we start to slowly unravel, while they're stuck in this very claustrophobic, kind of brutal environment together, we start to slowly unravel the reasons for their estrangement and the kind of dark intertwined history that they share. Yeah, that's kind of a very reductive explanation, but
is it period piece?
It is.
What's the year?
Yeah, it's set in 1995.
Yeah.
What's the significance of 1995?
We kind of waffled back and forth around a few years around there, and we landed on 95 because, first of all, we were interested in that period specifically, but also just the age of Ray and Jem and their involvement in Northern Ireland
Exactly.
was kind of dictated that. So it was, and then also we knew that it had to take place before the wide advent of cell phones for Ray's isolation to feel fully believable. So that was part
We
of it.
thought we could get away with, or I could get away with Ray being around 55. It's a bit of a stretch for me, but kind of worked it out from that.
Yeah.
Both brothers have been serving in the armed forces during the early Troubles.
I was fascinated by that. So your brother is played by Sean Bean, and when he arrives, there's so much silence in this shed that you've been living in, which I have to say, I imagined, Daniel, you had constructed yourself. That's what I'd imagine. But I love the silence between the brothers. That relationship is quite extraordinary, and the isolation is intriguing. Why have we got a background in the Troubles? What were you trying to tell us there?
It's funny because when we started to write it, we really began with the idea of the two brothers. We didn't.
Yeah.
There was nothing around that other than
I think
the estrangement. Perhaps a 20-year estrangement between the two of them. And I can't even remember how it was that we came to feel that, the soldiering part of it was going to be integral. But, as we were developing or following these characters as they reveal themselves, Jem was somebody that's, very inspired by the life of a very old friend of mine. And I think that's kind of what led us to a certain extent towards, and he'd had a full career in the British Army.
Yeah, initially when we were trying to figure out why also Ray was living in that kind of state of self-banishment, I think we landed early on the general idea that he'd been involved in a conflict of some kind, and we weren't sure exactly what it was going to be yet. And then my dad has long connections to Ireland, and I grew up there from 7 to 13, so I had learned about the Troubles a lot growing up, and I think they had always loomed large in my imagination and just in my head. I think we were kind of unconsciously drawn towards that. And the idea of the kind of intersection of like personal and national guilt, I think became kind of an interesting theme that sort of naturally grew out of that.
So initially, we did do in a very early draft. We had a version that was where their experiences had been during the Falklands conflict, but we explored that first for a bit. Yeah.
To ask you a bit about writing together, I think it was a unique experience going to see this film, which I love very much. I've never been aware of who wrote the screenplay as much as I was watching this film, because at the heart of the film, apart from the two brothers, we have a fractured relationship between a father and a son in a movie that you know very well has been written by a father and a son. And that's a very, very interesting dynamic. But clearly you don't have a fractured relationship. What was it like with the intensity in the writing process, just working together?
It was unlike any other experience of writing I'd had in the past. 'Cause I'd written other scripts before my own where I had really gone in with an extremely intense, detailed outline, and the structure was kind of decided on to an extent before I went into it. But with this, it was kind of the opposite, where we went in with almost like the cipher of this character and this kind of very elemental scenario, and then we were really just following the feeling, this sort of strange feeling of those first 10 pages, and also these characters kind of into the dark, and we didn't know where it was taking us. There was a lot of improvisation that we did over the course of it that kind of started to reveal details about the characters, and I guess the identities of Jem and Ray started to also kind of reveal themselves in opposition to each other in a really interesting way, and their shared past started to slowly become more clear. And also this kind of mystical element, I think, was pretty clear actually in ways that I didn't understand yet in those first 10 pages.
Once we had a sense of these two lads, we started to reach back towards their early childhood, and then the sort of previous generation, their father having been a veteran of the Second World War, and what their experience had been like with him coming back, obviously bringing with him, his own difficulties from his experiences during that war. And having grown up in a highly religious household where the threat of violence was never far away, not that those two things were connected, but then, a period of time we sort of felt that it was important that he'd had a period of time in a care home and so on. And
Yeah.
Can I ask you about faith and religion as that's come up? Because it's very present throughout the film. In fact, right at the very beginning, we see Sean Bean's character on his knees praying, and he has a tattoo on his back. Does it say "Only God Forgives" or something like that? What is the role of religion and faith in this story?
Well, certainly when it seemed clear to us that they'd grown up in a household that was really at the center of which was a very severely practiced Christian faith, it felt right that Jem, for him, that became the foundation of his life, and his faith has sustained him through all his experiences. And when we'd imagine the two brothers having been incredibly close, almost as twins might be, but Jem always had the strength between the two of them. Ray had a fracture in him and was always sort of chasing his brother, needing to be close to his brother, trying to follow his brother's example. But for reasons that become clear during the story, at a given moment, Ray absolutely abandoned that faith. And when we discover him, I think he's living a life with a sort of rather savage form of paganism.
Yeah, as you said, like these two kind of versions of faith or of spirituality, I think, are set up in opposition to each other early on. Like the prayer is this kind of search for God in organized religion, and I think even though we see these moments of organized religion and of Christianity, like the actual spirituality of the film is more in the natural world, like the pagan, the more kind of pagan aspect of it that you were talking about, where we sort of see war and the idea of like human bloodshed, but from the perspective more of nature and of the wind and the sky. And so, it's I think it definitely has a lot of Christian imagery in it, but it's not a Christian film. But
and at the same time too, the Ray, in his opposition to the faith is almost as strongly connected in the way that sometimes the effort that it takes to move away from something that has been instilled in you from such an early age, it's almost as if it's a sort of darker connection, but it's still there. And Ray, in an odd kind of a way, his life is being lived as an act of penitence. So, and that sort of is also a kind of connection to the early.
Yeah.